Heralded as a requiem, or even a swan song for the late Jim Morrison, Riders on the Storm would become a haunting reminder of the inevitable, all at once thunderous, calm, and foreboding. The Doors take us to a dark, desolate stretch of highway lined with danger, lovers, and the relentlessness of nature. A psychedelic and philosophical masterwork. This is the story of Riders on the Storm. Riders on the Storm is the last song Jim Morrison recorded before he died in France, to the best of our knowledge, of heart failure at only 27 years old. This was 2 years to the day after the death of Brian Jones, guitarist for the Rolling Stones, and 9 months after Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, all of whom were also 27 years old, creating the fabled 27 Club of Death. Its influence is immortalized by the death of Jim, but how it came to be and what inspired the song has everything to do with how Jim Morrison and the Doors lived. Now, Jim was an incredible fan of philosophy, and some of the works and teachings of Nietzsche and Heidegger can be seen in lyrics throughout the Doors' music. Into This World We Are Thrown can quite possibly be a direct reference to Heidegger's concept of thrownness, which Jim received a lecture on in 1963 at Florida State University, on how humans are basically thrown into existence. However, it's not only philosophy that contributed to the alluring atmosphere of Riders on the Storm. Truth be told, there are tons of interpretations on what inspired the lyrics and music. Lyrically, it's perhaps influenced by the serial killer Billy Cook, who took the lives of 6 people while hitchhiking in California. So when Jim states, "There's a killer on the road, if you give this man a ride, sweet family will die," could be directly related to that, but maybe those lyrics are a blend of concepts, not so on the nose. While Jim was attending FSU in Tallahassee, he was dating Mary Webelow, who lived 280 miles away in Clearwater, Florida. Jim would actually become a hitchhiker to visit her, so maybe he himself was a rider on the storm, reminiscing about the times where he had to suffer a long, lonely journey on a bleak highway to see the one he loves. And if you know anything about Florida, there's a storm around every corner. John Densmore, drummer for the Doors, gives us great insight into the lyrical mind of Jim Morrison. He says, "Jim always had notebooks of writings and poems to draw from, and would just pull lyrics out from these. Jim had made the film Highway, that was a road movie, and he played the hitchhiker who killed the guy that gave him a ride. It was out there, experimental. I'm not aware it was based on a true story, but Jim was a ferocious reader, as well as having a wild imagination." Moving further in his life, Jim falls in love with Pamela Corson, and decides he wants to leave the Doors and move all the way to Paris. He convinces Pamela to accompany him, and this was all going down just after he wrote the lines, "Girl, you gotta love your man. Take him by the hand. Make him understand. The world on you depends. Our life will never end." And of course, sadly, Jim passed away just after the song was released. Musically, the song is directly influenced by the song Ghost Riders in the Sky, that had garnered the fancy of Bing Crosby and even Johnny Cash to cover. Robbie Krieger, guitarist for the Doors, says Ghost Riders in the Sky directly influenced Riders on the Storm. Robbie says, "We were playing Ghost Riders in the Sky, and Jim was fooling around and came up with Ghost Riders on the Storm. When we recorded it, Jerry Sheff, the bass player, just played what the keyboardist Ray was playing with his left hand, and that's why it's so distinctive. It's not something a bass player would come up with." And as they recorded the song, Jim chose to add a last-minute vocal track of him whispering the lyrics delicately over his vocal melody, creating a simultaneously enchanting and haunting performance. And to really understand the power of Jim and the Doors' song, I leave you with this beautiful quote from the keyboardist Ray Manzarek. Ray says, "It was the last song recorded by the Doors, and the whisper voice is the last singing that Jim ever did in the studio, in the background, on the ride out." How prophetic is that? A whisper fading away into eternity, where he is now. Viewing it from the outside, you could put a neat little bow on it and see it as our last performance. But for us, we were just playing our butts off. Fast, hard, and rocking, but cool and dark too. Every Doors song has its own spirituality, its own existential moment. I love the sound of the Doors. I can become an outsider now and think to myself, that is one tight mother band. If you enjoy these videos and want to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. My videos will always be free, and this is a great way to help me make them better for you. Check out my debut album, The HollyHobs, on Spotify and Apple Music, and click the like button, subscribe, and notification bell because that is the best way to get notified when a new video is released. See you next time.